All right, first things first. So we're in Blender. I've got my screencast keys up. One thing that we're probably going to get into in a little bit. Well, let me do that real quick. So I'm going to come to Edit in Preferences, and if you go to your Edit and then Preferences, there's a little tab here called Add-ons. I have already enabled, and hopefully it's still there, some tools that come with Blender but aren't on by default. We're going to play with those a little bit. So I'm going to look for Loop, and we're looking for Loop tools. So type in Loop up here, and then you're just looking for this checkbox to be on. So check that box, and that's going to say that Loop tools will be on when you start Blender. It came with your download. It's not super shady. It's just there, just not on by default. If you want to make sure that Loop tools is always on, you can come down here to the little 3-line menu thing here and just save those preferences. And now Loop tools should be on next time you start Blender. We'll get to that later. All right, that's the zero base array. First things first. The actual first thing is we're going to go ahead and save this and create a new project folder. So I'm going to jump out to my Blender folder, create a new folder. Week 2, furniture, put your initials on it, and then again, I'm putting the year so that I don't confuse it with all the other week 2 furnitures in my folder. There's that folder. I'll go ahead and create 3 new folders in here. Renders, exports, the all-important scenes folder, and then textures. Jump into my scenes folder, and by default, I get untitled.blend. And I don't know what happened when we tried to do some renaming files. Let's call this furniture. The scene name isn't, if you give me the whole project structure, which you're supposed to, and it's actually part of the grade, then you don't necessarily have to put your initials on the scene name. The scene name can be whatever, because you've got your initials on the outer folder. Let me just say save Blender file. So there we go. It added the .blend back. So now we're in furniture.blend, and we've got a cube. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and use our first cube. And first I'm going to scale it. And so I'm going to use some hotkeys to do that. And they'll show up here in our little panel. And then we'll go from there. So I'm going to scale it on the Z and then pull down. So now we've got that. And then I'm going to scale it on Y and come out. And I've got this rough shape. If I get all the screencast keys here to my item, this might be too large. No, it's kind of right. Yeah, it's a big table. Okay, so my dimensions here, as I just scaled that, eyeballing it, I'm 2 meters on the X, 4 meters on Y, and 0.221 meters on Z. This is a large honking table. I've got a file for you that we'll release later. But let me go ahead and make a new cube right now and show you what I like to do with my Blender scene. So I've got a cube, and he starts off by default at 2 meters by 2 meters by 2 meters. I'm going to set his Z to 1.8 meters, Y to like 0.5, and then Z to like 0.75. This, hit my decimal number pad there. This is a 6 foot tall person. 1.8 meters is roughly 6 foot. Anyone here 6 foot? The rest of us a little bit shorter. You can go to Google, arrange your meters as needed. But if we're guesstimating 6 foot tallish person, 1.8 meters. So I'll drop this guy into a lot of my scenes, and we'll call him person. And then just have him there. Because sometimes in my mind, I'm like, is it 4 meters long? That's a massive table. But anyway, so we got this guy sitting here that we can just move off to the side, and we could like to scale things to him because most of our in-game engines and other things we're going to work in meters. Welcome to the international world. All right, so We're going to go ahead with large table. It's big, probably 0.21. That's thick. So I'm going to go maybe 0.1, see what that looks like. That's better on the Z. So I've got a table top, and I'm going to come underneath this now and start doing my modeling. So I'm going to tab. I'm going to grab this face on the bottom, and this guy right here is inset. I'm going to grab that tool and pull in. Now, first thing I want to point out is look at how it's not really uniformly coming in. We get a lot more thickness here than we do on the side. I can fix that. So what's happening is when we created our cube, it had its 2 by 2. It's a cube, right? So its proportions are still set to that, even though I scaled it and stretched it out. I can fix this. I'm going to hit tab, go back. I've got my cube, and we can look here in my little end panel on the side, and we can see not only our dimensions, but here's our scale. We're at 1 on the X, 2 something on the Y. Let's go ahead and make that an even 2, and 0.5. So that's what we're trying to fix. So if I, with my table selected, I hit Control A or Command A, and I'm going to apply, go ahead and do them all transforms, or just rotation and scale. So I'm going to apply the scale. Now my scale's back to 1, 1, and 1. We've reset the dimensions of our cube, and if I come back underneath here now, hit tab, grab this face, and inset, it's coming evenly. Okay, so if you're trying to do any kind of operation in Blender and it looks like it's skewed, like it's doing more on one side than the other, you just need to rescale it. So, all right, we did that. I'm going to bring that in. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter, and then I'm going to inset again. Thusly, I'm just eyeballing at this point. And so this bit that we just made is what I'm going to have like the underside frame of the table. And we'll just start with that. So I'm going to go ahead and grab these faces, go to select mode here, shift click, grab this little inner frame here, and I'm going to extrude those down. So let me find my extrude. What is going on with my extrude tool? It says none. Interesting. By default, I usually do extrude along normals. Pull that down, and I've got a little frame on the bottom of my table helping hold it together. Need legs. A couple of different ways we can do this. So I'm going to go ahead and go to edge mode, and I'll show you one way, and then we'll undo it and do it again. Let's go to my select. So I can grab these edges right here across from each other. So I got the inner edge, the long one, and the other inner edge. If I go to edge and say just subdivide, I can get a line cut between them. And almost any one of the tools that we do, we got this cool little deal down here that's hiding. If I open it up, I've got my subdivide stuff. So I can change the number of cuts right there, make a whole bunch of them, go backwards. And then as far as like it'll pinch and slide and do all kinds of stuff there, straight cuts, corner cuts, smoothness. We're very straight right now, so that's not going to do a lot. But I want 2 cuts, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I could do that, and then I do the same thing here, and now I'm going to grab all 4 of these. I've got this row of 4 edges. I'm going to do the same thing, edge, subdivide, go ahead and increase that to 2, and now I've got this little Rubik's Cube looking bit on the bottom. Let me undo all that and show you what else I could have done. So that's one way to do things. In Blender, as in Unity and almost everything else we deal with in this department, there's 100 ways to do anything. So this time I'm going to grab the face on the bottom, and same thing, I'll still use edge and then subdivide, and that'll just do the whole thing. So if I'd subdivided the face and said 2, then I get the same pattern. So depending on what you want to do, subdivide's a really cool thing. I'm going to move these around a little bit. So I'm going to grab these edges. Three. You know what I'm not seeing is my statistics. Okay, we're going to pause for a minute, and we're going to come up here. Tab. Come out of edit mode. Where's it at? This guy right here. So these 2 circles over the top of each other. It looks like Crisis on Infinite Earths. next to our force spheres here. I hit that and hit statistics, check that box. I get this cool thing that I like to have on in Blender. And so it's going to tell me how many objects I've got in my scene, how many I've got selected versus how many are there, number of vertices, edges, faces. We get all these stats here. This is really helpful when we start selecting like a certain number of edges that we're going to do something with. We can keep track of, is it the right number? Is it what I expect it to be? So I've got my stats on. I'm going to go ahead and hit tab again. Just double check myself. I should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 edges selected. And it's telling me I've got 6 of the 64 edges in my table selected. So I didn't accidentally like select this edge over here and not see it, which is what I was trying to avoid. So I'm looking for 6 edges. I got 6 edges. I'm going to scale these, which is a cool way to move things apart or toward each other if you've got a symmetrical object. So I'm going to scale and grab on the Y and just pull these out this way. And then I'll do the same thing here. I'll grab these. Move all of them. I'm checking for 6 edges. I'm going to scale those out too. So bring those out this way. And I've got in each corner about the thickness of the leg I want to push out. Go to face mode. I'll grab a leg. Grab all the legs. And then extrude down. And I've got my table literally sitting in the floor and my 6-foot tall cube man over there. So I don't know how tall these legs should be. The good news is once they're extruded, you can just go to your move tool and move those same faces to the length you need. So this is a chonky looking table. We're going to do some editing to it to make it look a little bit better. But the first thing I'm going to do is move this up onto the ground that I don't have yet and try and get it scaled. It's probably too high because that's a big table. All right, so I'm going to do one more thing here. I'm going to add a plane. And I'm just going to use this as our ground. So I'm going to scale that guy up. And if I grab here on this little, it's a plane. So it's really only 2-dimensional. I could scale it all the way and it wouldn't get thicker. But if I wanted to just scale on the X and Y, I grab this square here and I'm scaling that way. So I'm just making a floor really quick. Okay, now I'm going to grab my table. And I'll show you one more thing that's cool we can do. So up here, this magnet, we can snap during a transform. So I'm going to turn that on. And then I'm going to say snap to closest, and I'm going to go edge. So if I'm snapping to an edge, and I'm moving my table, so I can move my table up here. And then while I'm moving on the Z-axis, I let my, I was too far above it. All right, I'm going to pull it all the way up first. Pull it out of there. Now, as I move it back down and I let my mouse hover over on the edge of this plane, see that little like hourglass looking thing? It's snapping to that edge. So now my table is sitting perfectly on top of the plane. And that is not a table. That is, what is that? This guy's 6 foot tall. He can barely see over the top. Okay, I made my legs too long. So I'll pull this up. Here's one thing I can do. Turn snapping off. I'm going to move my guy in here closer. Pull my table down to where I expect it to be, around waist height, right? Ish. It's a big table. We'll go a little bit taller. All right, so now I've got it where I think I want it to be in relation to my 6 foot tall guy. And I'm just going to move those leg ends back up to my plane. So grab those, turn my snapping back on. There we go. And then pull those up to that edge. So once you start on an axis, like you can move your mouse all over the place. And so I'm just going to hover it on this edge, and boom, my legs are exactly on the plane. And it's a really, really big table. It looks like short legs, but next to our 6 foot tall guy, it's kind of massive. All right, I'm going to grab my plane here and just hit H to hide it for a minute. And Who has younger siblings? Yeah, mostly. A few little cousins. Yeah. Older siblings have kids. You're an uncle, an aunt. All right. Guess what? The corners on this table are deadly. Look at that. If I get a toddler running through the room, that really sharp corner, we're losing an eye. It's not going to be good. So we need to get into some new tools. Here we go. I'm going to grab the edged corners here. If I can just select one, zoom in on that. Let me show you one cool thing. So I can go around and using my middle mouse button, I can pan all the way around and like try to get in here and shift and select the next edge. Oh, I didn't get it right. But if I've got one selected, I can come up here to select, select loops, and I'm going to select, in this case, edge rings. And it's got all 4 of them around that. So now I've selected all the corners that are in a ring around the top of this table, and I'm going to bevel those. So I'm going to come down here to bevel, and then same thing, I'm just going to move this guy for a bit, get the operation started, and now my guy should pop up here, and I can increase the number of segments, go to like 4 or 5. It's on a nice smooth. So now we've got rounded corners on our table, and it's toddler friendly. Top here, it's kind of a thick table too. I'm going to move it down a little bit, that tabletop. We're going to get a little bit fancy, so zooming in on that. I'm going to go ahead and inset this again. Set the top just a little bit, and then extrude it up just a little bit. This cool like edge thing going on. And anyway, we've got a table. It's got rounded corners. It's got some nice detail on the top. The legs and the frame are kind of chunky, but we're going to go with it and move on to our chairs. One more thing before I finish this. Look at all that faceting around there. So this, by default, everything is on shade flat. Right? So everything's flat, which means as the light hits it, we're going to see each individual face. Now, I can really make this look terrible and go shade smooth. And it's trying to wrap the light around all of the corners and edges, and it looks really funky. There's one in the middle that's prime. So I'm going to right click and shade auto smooth, and we get some nice shading around this beveled corner, but then we also see the creases on our like more right angle edges. And to change the threshold for that auto smoothing, if I come over here, well, first it's here in this dialog. I need to move my mouse guy, he's in the way. And so I can change this to, we're going to smooth anything 30 degrees and under. Or move that up to, if I go up to 90, we're still looking super smooth again. You can change that according to what your model is. If you just did auto smooth, it's down there in the corner. If you want to change it after the fact, come over here to this upside down Triforce, this little green guy here on data, scroll down to normals, and there's our auto smooth. We can turn that on and off and change the threshold right there. So we got smooth corners. We got a really big table. Your table does not have to be this big. This is probably too big to fit in most of your dorm rooms. And we got our guy standing there. So let's go ahead and we'll do almost the same thing again and make a chair. So I'm gonna name this. So cube is not very descriptive. So I'm gonna call it table. And that didn't do it. I'm in the wrong tab. Come up here. Name the sub object. So we got a table inside our table. All right, so that's renamed. I've got person renamed. I'm gonna go ahead and hide the table, and we're gonna start over. So I'm gonna make another cube. And for most of creating this chair, it's gonna be the same thing. I don't know. It's a big chair, like 0.3 meters. Sit your booty on. Maybe not. Maybe my guy's a little chunky. Do 0.5 by 0.5. Someone do the math for me. That's, yeah, you might be falling off that a little bit, but it's a start. All right, so we got a chair started. I'm going to do the same thing really quick. I'm going to apply that scale so that when I go to inset, it's not going to be weird on me. I think I want to inset. I'm gonna stab the legs right up into it. So I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna take the front end. Here we go. So I'm gonna tab, hit this cube right here, or this face, and we're gonna make this just a little bit wider in the front, as we've seen for a lot of chairs. So we've got some form to it. And then I'm gonna come to the bottom here, and here's where I'm gonna use my loop tools that we were enabling earlier. So I'm gonna grab this face on the bottom, and I'm gonna do a whole lot of subdivision. So I'm gonna go edge, subdivide, and let me just crank this up a bunch. We can get rid of extra geometry later if we want it. If we want to, that's kind of, yeah. I'm gonna start at 6. I'm gonna go more. We'll go to 8. I'm just making a lot of faces down here, so they're kind of in place where I want them to be, and then we'll fix it later. Okay, now I'm going to grab these that I want to turn into the legs coming out of the bottom, and I'm going to subdivide those again. We're going to end up with a lot of extra geometry down here. My apologies to your game engine that's trying to render everything at 100 frames per second. So edge, I'm going to subdivide those again. Go to 2. And so I've got the 3x3 deal there. Let's see if this will work on all of them at the same time. This might be tricky. Okay, so I enabled my loop cut tools. So I'm going to right click on here, and so my loop tools is on top, and I'm going to try to hit circle and see what happens. It worked. So using the number of edges that I had on those squares, it took them all and circularized it. So now I've got little circle dudes on the bottom. So I can get some nice round legs coming out of here. So extrude along normals and just start pulling it down. Kind of cool. All right. That's kind of okay. Let me see. That's probably far enough. Just comparing it to the guy there. It's going to look like a squat little chair. Let me unhide my plane and my table. Still got my magnets on. Bring that up and then down again. Yeah, that's too short. This chair is for the kiddie table. Eyeballing in Blender is tough, man. Perspective, it's kind of rough. It's all right though. I think we'll start with this. Just want to bring it up some. We don't want it that high. Turn my magnets off. Just kind of guess. There-ish. Pretending that's what we want. All right, I'm going to hide my table. So I'm going to grab that hit H. I'm going to come down to my chair again. Okay, we'll hide the plane again too. Focus. One thing I just did, let me just explain this. So I had these like 9 faces on the bottom selected, on the bottom of each thing. If I hit F, it creates new faces out of that. And so now I've gotten rid of the extra edges and stuff, and there's like cool little circles. I'm going to extrude those down a couple more times and try and get them to the ground. So E, come down here, there-ish, and then E again and bring it down. So now I've got the bottom selected. I'm going to unhide my plane, grab my move tool, snap those. Oh, I don't have snapping on. Snap those back here. All right, so now I've got these cuts in the bottom, and I'm gonna build some support. It's a funky looking chair. Your chair doesn't need to look like this. Most chairs probably don't need to look like this, but it's what we're doing for now. So I'm going to grab some edges. I'm going to grab some faces in the middle here. See if I can look at this. For those who don't have a middle mouse button or trying to do life on a trackpad, we got this guy up here, so we can pan around with that guy. We can also go straight to some orthographic views with that, which is kind of cool. Go in wireframe mode, back into shading, so that if you need some perspective on some things, that helps. All right, so I'm trying to grab this face here, and then the one directly across from it. So I'm going to shift and grab that. I think that's good enough for now. And let me see if I can find my guy. So yes, it should be here under edge, and I'm going to bridge edge loops. And that's just going to create a support structure right in between those. When you're bridging, you need to have the same number of vertices on both sides for your edge loop. So if I try to come over here and I'm going to select two faces here, which is a total of 6 vertices, and then go to one face over here, it'll either not work or it'll work and do something terrible. Let me try it again. So edge, bridge edge loops. Okay, it used to just not even, it'd be like, no, can't do that. It did, and it made lots of horrible stuff for us. I'm going to undo that. Okay. Blender is less concerned with keeping us from messing things up. And there's like, all right, if you say so. All right, so I'm going to grab one on each side. Same thing. I'm going to go to edge, bridge edge loops. We got a nice clean support there. I'm going to finish bracing this chair. Which looks more like a bar stool at this point, but still short. Okay, so we did that. Looks kind of cool. We could still move the legs on the front away from each other a little bit, or keep them like that. It's wider there. Anyway, we need to build our chair back. So mostly the things we've been doing, and going forward. So let me just grab this. Okay, I'm going to grab these edges here, and we'll do the edge subdivide. So grab these two opposing edges, subdivide. We'll do it twice, 3 times. Put them where I want them. And again, we'll delete the rest later. Okay, that looks good. So I'm going to plan on strutting something up here and here, and then I'm going to do that other selection tool thing again. So I want these, and I'm going to select the edge rings. Got all of them across the top there in parallel order, and I'm going to edge and subdivide. I'll do it a bunch until it gets back where I want it to be. Now I've got just tons of extra geometry that I don't want, but I've got faces where I want them to be later. When we are getting rid of geometry that we don't need, that's when we get into the problems of n-gons, which is we've got a polygon with more than 3 or 4 vertices, and we can inadvertently get into the Pac-Man scenario that we talked about last week. What about Pac-Man? Pac-Man bad. Yeah, you don't want your edges folding in on themselves. Go ahead. Oh, there's a marker. All right, we'll see if this works. All right, so again, this is, I've got an edge, and then if it goes in on itself, that's concave, okay, at any point, and that's bad. So we want all of our faces to either be triangles or squares of some sort, but everything to be convex and not concave. If you've got a face that folds in on itself, like Pac-Man's little mouth, then we have problems. So we're not there yet. This is still pretty straight, but I've got a lot of extra geometry up here that I don't need. I've got this weird face down here that is it could be one straight face, but because of all the subdividing I did on top, like look at this. If I select this face here, it's one face, but it's got 21 vertices connected to it. So it's a little weird. We're not going to worry about that now. I'm just pointing it out so that we understand these concepts in the future. All right, I'm gonna grab these two guys, and we're gonna do almost the same thing and just start extruding up. Pull this up, move them back a little bit. So after I move them, we're gonna give some form to it. Extrude again, and you see I'm doing a little bit of everything here. So I'll hit E for extrude, or I'll use the extrude tool on the side. I'm gonna come up a little bit, and we'll put a brace there in the back, and then E again, and come up some more, and E again for the top part. And I'm just planning out. That was terrible. All right. Have my snapping on again. So E up. So I'm going to grab these here. And one other thing we can do is inset instead of subdivide. So I'm going to grab these faces here on the side. We're going to make a little bit of a brace in the middle there, but I'm going to inset the faces first. So I'm going to come in a little bit. And then I'm going to bridge those edge loops. I've got a brace in the back there. I'm going to grab these up here. I think how I want to do this. Another shortcut, go to select tool right now. If you've got a number pad, again, good luck. I don't remember all the non-number pad shortcuts, but you've got a number pad, Control plus increases your things that you've got selected, and then Control minus shrinks it back down. So I can just anything connected to what I've got when I hit Control plus adds to it. So I'm going to grab this top bit here. And I'm going to maybe regret this later, but I'm going to try something. I'm going to try to scale it a little bit on the X just to make this a little bit wider. Same thing up here. Just scale these out. So I'm getting a little bit more form on the top. Kind of cool. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to try to build the back headrest part. So I'm going to grab these. I've got four faces selected. I'm going to inset those just a little bit. If I inset them all together, they're going to stay uniform. So I can keep them cool. I'm going to grab the inner ones here. Edge, bridge edge loops. And more stuff I can do here with bridge edge loops, right? So when this tool comes up, again, by default, it's just hanging out down here. But it comes up, I can increase number of cuts. So if I go to 1 cut, 2 cuts, 3 cuts, and it starts to try to smooth. Since I started with something that wasn't directly parallel to each other, they were angled a little bit. As I start to increase the number of cuts, it gives me a little bit of an arch there, which is kind of cool. We like it. So we'll keep that. So I've got the chair back, at least in the middle, looking good. I'm going to just keep forming on this. So I'm going to select these guys here. Just going to extrude them out a little bit. And this is, so especially here, I've got two faces facing away from each other. This is where you want your edge, your extrude tool to be extrude along normals. So the normal means which way is the face facing, right? So it's going to go whatever direction it's facing. If I try to extrude, let's just say extrude the region and try to extrude them all together, they're all going to try and go one direction, which isn't what we want. There's lots of other things we can do, but extrude along normals just means whichever way you're facing, go that way. And so if I extrude, now they're going to kind of branch out a little bit. So I'm going to bring those out some, and we'll form those a little bit in a minute. Actually, with those selected, so we beveled edges. I'm going to bevel the tops of these, just so I've got faces selected. I'll bevel those, and it's just going to round all 4 edges of that face. And again, we're making it toddler friendly. I'm going to up the segments to at least 3. It's a little weird, but we're going to pretend that's what we were trying for the whole time. So we've got those. The other thing I want to do is I'm going to move some faces this way. So I'm going to grab this guy. All the ones in the middle. I'm just going to move them back along the y-axis a little bit to get some form there. And then again, Control and plus, and I'm selecting a bunch more. I'll move those back as well. And I'm starting to get a little bit of an arch going backwards this way. So whoever designed this chair, oh shoot, that was us. Got a nice backrest on the top that's rounded and looking comfortable. And then this really sharp 2x4 in the middle to snap you right in the back of your spine. So maybe we can fix that too. So I'll do the same thing. So I'm going to grab, want to go back to select mode. All right, so I'm going to grab one edge here. Same thing, I want to go select edge rings. Now I've got all 4, and I'm going to use some edge tools. So I'm going to subdivide. Probably that's enough. Now let's go for it. We'll go 4 times. We'll get the same number of cuts that they had here, and then we'll just start moving those back. So I'll grab, here's something fun we can do. So I'm going to grab this edge right here. I'm going to select, and the edge rings. Okay, so now I've got all 4 of those, and I could just move those by themselves, and they move the faces with them. And then the same thing, Control plus, I'm getting more of them and moving that back. So now we've got almost the same kind of curve pattern there. So it's not going to quite break our spine. I kind of like it. I'm going to go to Auto Smooth on this guy. It's nice enough. Maybe a little bit more form than we can get from the Maker Lab. The other thing, last thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to round out the tops of this because again, these corners are not toddler friendly. Grab those. Two, 3, 4 edges selected, and we'll just bevel those guys too. Maybe. Hello? Oh, I'm on inset. Hit the wrong button. Control Z is your friend. Bevel. Bunch. Increase those segments to like 5 or something. Still a little derpy. So I've done this furniture bit for years. I have never created the same chair twice. Your chair does not have to look like this, but follow along with the tools. Like make it, use edge loops, use edge bridging, subdivision, beveling, all that fun stuff. Before we get too much further, let's texture these guys. So he looks kind of good. I want to point out UV editing over here. So if I come over from our layout tab, which we usually hang out in, maybe it'd be easier to look at it with the table first. Go to open the table up here. We may scale our chair later. So I got my table. Looks kind of okay-ish. We did do some stuff to fix some scaling, and then we did more scaling. I'm going to come over here, UV editing, and this gives me my UV layout, which means where textures are going to go. If we apply textures to it, and then it's showing by face. So I'm in edit mode here. I'm going to go to face mode, and if I hit A, I'm selecting all of the faces, A for all, on the table. And here's what they look like laid out. Why is this? This is the original UV unwrap for the cube we started with, right? So think about the boxes that you just tore up and threw in the trash for Christmas. They probably followed this kind of pattern, right? So this is what the cube was unfolded. We didn't reset it. We did all kinds of cuts and bevels and all kinds of stuff to it, but we didn't reset the UV layout. So if I try to texture this now, let's just do it. Let's just show. Ha ha. All right. We'll come back to this. Yes, we'll come back to the UV layout. So I'm going to go to Photoshop. I'm just going to go to a new file for now. And I will make this, we like everything to be a nice binary square. So let's go 1080, 2160, 2160. We'll do like a 2K image. And that's 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, count it up. So 2160, unless I math wrong. It's a nice square using our binary numbers. I'm going to go ahead and create that. So I've got this. I'm going to hit Control H to get rid of my tools there. And creating a nice wood grain fiber to put on our table is like a couple of steps in Photoshop. It's super nice. There's a Photoshop class over the summer. We'll get a lot deeper than this, but this is quick and dirty. So I'm going to select some colors here in my color swatch, and I want them to be roughly brownish, right, which is dark orange. So I'm going to come down here. We'll get a brown there, and then we'll do one for here. Same deal. We'll come up to around orange, find a dark-ish version of it. We'll start with those. So I'm going to come over here, just make sure this is unlocked just in case, my layer, and filter, render, fibers. And you can play with the variance and the strength all day long. Yeah, with that, randomize it a little bit. We say, okay, boom, wood grain. Zoom in on that guy. See it. Just took those two colors, made basically a wood grain pattern. We're going to go with it. So I'm going to go File, Export, and quick export is PNG because most game engines like those. I'm going to go to Documents and Blender and find my Week 2 2024 furniture. I'm going to save this right to my textures folder as wood grain. Now here we're doing things a little bit backwards. I made the texture first, and then we're going to fix the unwrap because I want to show what it looks like with a bad unwrap. Usually we'd go the other way. We'd create the unwrap and then fill in the wood grain on top of those stencils. So I've got that saved. It's in my Blender folder now. So I come here. I'm just going to go back to layout first. So I've got my table. If I pop over here to the third circle in line, there's materials showing, and I don't have material yet. So I'm going to grab my table, come to my red circle. I'm going to create a new material. I'll leave that default material as it is. I'll create a new one, and we'll call it wood grain matte for material. And I'm going to take material off of this. So I'm going to hit minus. So this has only got wood grain matte on it. And then under my base color, I'm going to hit this little yellow circle and say I want you to use an image texture. Now it changes to, wow, it changed to black. Interesting. Usually if it does, if any 3D software can't find a material or texture, we go to this like ridiculous pink fuchsia color. If you've ever seen that in a game, it's because they lost the texture somewhere. Surprise, this one, I guess because we didn't set one, we went to black. But I'm gonna come over here. So now I've got my wood grain matte. I added an image texture. Now I've got these things here. I'm gonna say open. So I'm gonna open up an image texture, and it should open right into my scenes folder where I originally saved this scene. I'm gonna pop up one, find my textures folder. There's wood grain. And now we have a wood grain table. But look at where it does weird stretchy things. So is it... Shift H to hide everything except what I'm looking at. We can kind of pan around this guy. So we got really, really stretchy stuff on the side here where we extruded out. Any of our extrusions, since we didn't change the UV wrap at all, should have that, like we just basically took a 1 pixel line of our fiber and stretched it. And so that's why these are like just straight lines all the way down our extrusions. It's a little weird on the side. All the extrusions have straight lines. I mean, we like IKEA for being cheap furniture, but still we might not. We're like, come on. We know it's not real wood grain that you've got on the outside of that, but make it look better. So we can fix this. So this guy selected. I'm going to go back to UV editing. There is an art to UV mapping. Don't be scared of it. If you've ever tried to open up your game files or mod a game and you've seen these UV unwraps, they're kind of crazy looking. You take one image and like put all the details on it, and it's all like packed together really nice. It's cool. It's cool things to do. You don't have to be scared of it though. So I've got my guy selected here. Hit A. So I selected all of my faces, and I could unwrap this myself and put each individual face and scale it and like bundle it together, or I can let Blender do the work for me. So I'm just gonna hit U for unwrap, and I'm gonna do a smart UV project. I've got some settings here for angle limits, scaled, correct aspect. Oh my gosh, make sure that's on, especially in this case. So this is gonna say everything that we've got, keep it to the same scale. So I don't have like wood grain that looks like this on the top, and like it's super zoomed in on another part. So we're gonna keep all the defaults here and just hit OK. And then took all of our faces and laid them out, and grouped them according to whatever the software was programmed to do, so that we didn't have to. And we're gonna call that a day. So I'm gonna come over here to layout. Now we can look, we've got nice modeled wood grain all the way down the legs. You can change which direction those faces are going, because we got wood grain going this way, it's going this way. It kind of did a good job. So now we've got a nice wooden table. We can take that same wood grain material and add it to our chair. If I can find, oh, I didn't name my chair, so it's just cube. Chair, drag it out this way. That still looks super small compared to my table. That's fine. We'll scale it up. So I'm gonna hit S, just come up a little bit. That looks better. Shift H to hide everything else. Okay, so we think it looks nice. Scale to our table. We're not going to do any changes to it, so we're calling it done. That's art, by the way. Art is never done until you decide you're done working on it. When you're like, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. That's when art's done. Some people are looking at me like I'm crazy. Other people are like, yes, 100%. Yeah, that's where it's at. So we're calling this chair done. Now look at my scale here. It's uniform, but I'm going to go ahead and hit Control A again and just go ahead and apply the rotation scale so it's all at 1. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to add the wood grain that I've already got to this, so I don't need to do anything up here. I've got my chair selected. I'm on the material tab. I'm going to hit this globe here, drop down, and just find wood grain material. And see, it does the exact same thing. This face that we started with looks nice. Everything else is stretched and skewed and blah. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to hit tab, go into edit mode, A to select all the faces, U for UV unwrap, smart UV project, save all those, hit tab again. And now we've got our wood grain following along all the contours of our chair. Does it match? Let's look up here. So let's select this face and this face, zoom in. I've got it going this way and then it goes this way. So if that bothers you, you can change the rotation of where those faces are at. And since I brought it up, we'll go ahead and look at it really quick. So I'm going to go to UV editing. So again, I've got these two faces. This one is there, and it's roughly getting the grain lengthwise, and then this one's the other way. But if I just wanted to fix this one face, then the same tools that I've got in my modeling are kind of mirrored here. So I'm going to go to right, this is vertex, edge, and face, just like we've got in the modeling tool. So I'm going to just grab this whole face. And then I'm going to use the rotate tool, and I can just rotate this around a little bit. Or I can use my type-ins and give it an exactly, I'm going to rotate it by 90 degrees once this guy pops up. If I come back here to layout, right, like it's more following the contour of the grain. So if you want to fix which way the wood grain's going, all you've got to do is grab that face in the UV editing mode. Or, and this next one is islands, so a grouping of faces that are stitched together. So I'm going to grab this island. It's not all there. Hit A, select everything. Right, so that island, if I decided for whatever reason I wanted this to have the wood grain going the other way, I could grab that whole island in the UV editing mode and just rotate it around. But I like it. They all look kind of good to me. And again, this chair is good enough, so we're done. That's how the art's done. All right, so we got a chair. Our rubric said we needed 4 chairs. So go ahead and make 3 more chairs. No, this is all digital. We don't have to do that. Let me move my chair up. Move this guy up so he's sitting on the floor that we haven't added anything to yet. Go ahead and unhide my table. Let me unhide my light. I'm just going to unhide all this stuff. Okay, so I've got my chair, which apparently is now existing inside of my person. And he exists. We like him. He's still called Cube, so we messed that one up. I'm going to call him Chair. Zoom in on him. And I just need to make a copy of him, which is just Shift D. Now, if I hit Shift D and start moving my mouse around, my new duplicate just goes like wherever my mouse is at. If I don't like that, I can hit Escape. And my duplicate stays where the original was. And now I can just move him out along one axis. Let me turn my magnet snapping off. So I've got him, and he looks kind of good, and we'll move him over here. This is one thing IKEA is never going to give you, is just you created one thing and boom, now you got a bunch of copies. It doesn't work like that. But I like that one. Same thing, Shift D, Escape, G for grab, Y, just to go on the Y axis, and just move them along there. Shortcut this guy. So Shift D, Escape, G, Y, move him directly across. R, Z to only rotate on the Z axis, and then to spin them around. And now I've got 4 chairs with wood grain. You don't have to do wood grain along the whole chair. If you decide that you want like the farm style look, like, and just do, you know, part of it's painted white, part of it's wood grain, that kind of thing, go nuts. Eventually, when we're just putting wood grain on all our furniture, the room can start to look boring. So have some fun, mix it up. Where are we at? We got 19 minutes left and a bunch of things left to cover. The table and chairs is kind of the big thing. We can come back and do the bookcase and the round table lamp, or we can do the meta ball couch. Do the meta ball couch. Just do something different. All right. Just going to hide all the things. Shift H. So who remembers playing with meta balls last week? Really goofy, slurpy things. As we were doing that last week, it occurred to me what they'd be good for, finally, after all these years. So we're going to make a couch out of meta balls. I'm going to add, I'm going to do a meta ball cube. And that's way too big. For whatever reason, it's 4.3 meters. I'm going to scale that down. Yeah, 1-ish, 1 meter. This is a good size cushion. We're making a big couch to go with our big table. The scale on the Z. I'm just trying to get something that looks like a big fluffy couch cushion. and that didn't do it. Yeah, thereabouts. So we got a rough shape. I'm going to do the same thing. Now that I've got my cushion shape, I'm going to do the same thing we did earlier. I'm just going to Shift D to duplicate it, and then escape, and then I'm going to move it up. So I've got this guy. All right, he does this like weird like slurpy thing when he gets close to it. I'm going to rotate him out, give him some angle, so he's going back a little bit, and move him again. Like this rough chair shape. Looks soft and fluffy-ish. Yeah. Down a little bit. Yeah, like that. Okay, I'm gonna go do the same thing. They're separate but together. It's weird. So I'm gonna go ahead and use my hierarchy view over here, my scene view. Make sure I've got them both selected, and then Shift D to duplicate, escape, and then I'm just gonna pull it over on the x-axis. And then we just want them to kind of connect and give me that cool loopy thing there. So this guy is at this first one. It's a 0, 0, so that's good. This guy over here is probably Metaball 2. So he's at 109. I'm going to grab both of those. I'm trying to make this. I'm going to move them both to like 1.1. The next time I duplicate, it's going to be easier. So I'm going to grab these two again. Shift D, escape. And I'm going to move them over to -1.1 so that they're the same distance. Or we could eyeball it. You just did the one. 0, 0, 1, 1, 1. -1, 1. There it is. That's the one that didn't move right. -1.1. All right. So now we've got what would have been kind of complex. If we started with a cube to try and get this soft, rounded couch shape, would have been difficult. These metaball cubes, we can do lots of dumb stuff. I mean, wonderful things with. So to finish this out, I'm going to add some more metaballs. So I'm going to go ahead and make a capsule. Scale it down. Rotate it along the Z. I don't know why the Z is not hitting there by 90. Hit enter. So I've got this guy that I can start to move into place to be the arm of the couch. He's too big still. We'll scale him some more. Just keep going up and down until somewhere between too big and too small. We've got the arm of a couch. 1.65 is fine. I'm going to do the same thing. Shift D, escape, move this over to -1.65. Now it's symmetrical, and I've created this ridiculously fluffy looking couch. Do one more. I'm going to do one more on the bottom just to be the base. Yeah. Add a metaball cube again. Oof. Okay, I'm going to S. I'm going to scale it on Z. Pull that down. S, and then scale it on Y. I'm hitting Z and Y. I don't know why it's not showing up in the thing. And I'm just trying to get it roughly there without it freaking out on me. All right, this base is being funky. Now that we're closer, let me try again. So there. Just going to scale it a little bit more. So S, Y. Move it back. So it looks like the bottom of a beanbag chair. We could extrude out some more solid looking legs if we wanted to, but we've got basically a couch. Kind of like it there. All right, I'm gonna grab all my metaball things. This is the final trick. It's kind of tall. Okay, you know what? Before I do that, I'm gonna fiddle with this base one last time. So it's the last metaball. I'll do this manually. So I'm gonna scale it, pull it on the Z, just make it a little bit thinner. Don't have to jump way up on this couch, and then pull it up some. A little bit. Okay. I'm gonna grab all my metaball things here. Make sure they're all selected. I'm gonna right click and convert to mesh. So I'm just gonna merge them all together. It's one big thing called mball 9. I'm gonna change that to couch. And now look at this crazy thing. If I hit tab, this is all the geometry that we didn't have to make ourselves. Some of it's kind of ugly looking, but this is probably the fastest way to make a big fluffy looking couch without starting with a cube and rounding and beveling and like all this stuff. Like it's kind of it's a cool shortcut. We can do some tools to clean it up. I don't know what you're probably going to lose your remotes into these holes a lot. I don't know what that's about. But we made a couch. So there's another 10 points on your grade. I'm going to go ahead and give that a color. So I'm going to make a new material. We are not going to put wood grain on this. That would be just terrible. I bet someone has probably actually made that. A wood grain fabric, but we're just going to change the color here. I literally called it red. That would be lying to everybody if the fabric was green and the name of it was red. Yeah, I kind of like that actually. You talked me into it. All right, there we go. Colorblind people will never know. Okay, this is the kind of hate speech we have in our class. Let me see if I auto smooth that. Oh, that kind of makes it gives a little bit more form. Auto smooth. What a full on smooth does. I like auto smooth. Okay, we made a couch. Is it perfect? Oh no. Would I 3D print this? Maybe, maybe not. Good luck getting this in the Maker Lab, but you know, it's kind of cool. Made a couch. All right, let me unhide my other things and see if this is even remotely to scale. Move my big fluffy couch up. It's not bad actually. Kind of worked. So I'm going to go ahead and unhide my floor. Magnet snap this guy to the floor. And then move him. I'll rotate him around. Not that way. Just rotate him on the Z-axis. Grab, move just on the Y. Roughly centered. Grab, move just on the X, and move him back. All right. So when you've got a lot of people over gaming and you don't have enough actual chairs, you just pull this couch up to the table. Good to go. All right, we're going to go ahead and call it there. The wood grain will fold over into Thursday. We'll do just a quick bookcase and a table lamp or table and lamp, and then start working on walls. So your assignment is really just we're going to make this cool scene full of furniture. You should have your folder structure in place if you followed along. You should have everything ready to go to finish creating your room, and then we'll create some cool lights and renders and stuff later. So I want to go lay on that couch right now. That looks kind of comfy. All right. I'll see you then.